Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am Renee Brooks, the Program Specialist with the Division of Community Assistance in the Office of Community Services. Today's webinar is FY26 CSBG State Plan Webinar General Overview. As you enter the webinar, please let us know where you are joining us from in the chat. So the agenda for today's webinar will begin with a welcome and a preliminary remarks from CSBG Program Operations Branch Chief Verna Best. Following Verna, you will hear from members of the Program Operations Branch as we provide an overview of the requirements for the FY2026 CSBG State Plan, including timelines, the CSBG eligible entity list, and the required sections for a complete CSBG State Plan. We will end the webinar with time for responses to questions, an opportunity to provide feedback, and any closing thoughts from our leadership. Again, please be sure to ask all questions in the Q&A pod. I will now hand it over to Verna Best, Program Operations Branch Chief with the Division of Community Assistance. Welcome, Verna.
Thank you, Renee. I appreciate your upbeat energy today, and welcome everyone. On behalf of the Office of Community Services, Division of Community Services Leadership Team, I want to welcome you all to the Fiscal Year 26 Community Services Block Grant State Plan webinar. I have profound gratitude and appreciation for the work of state lead agencies and the entire CSBG network, so we intend to maximize our time together today. I believe you all would agree with me that CSBG plays a vital role in reducing poverty, revitalizing communities, and empowering low-income individuals and families to become fully self-sufficient. If you agree with that, I'm going to make sure that you're paying attention early on. Let me see some virtual emojis to show our solidarity and ongoing commitment to the mission and purpose of the goals and objectives of CSBG. I know you all believe that. That's why you work so diligently. As stewards of CSBG funding, your dedication, innovation, and accountability ensure that services reach those who need them most. This state plan reflects your commitment to anti-poverty strategies that produce meaningful outcomes for every community we serve. Together, even during this time of uncertainty, I encourage you to work alongside of the federal office, and let's bring our best work forward and continue building pathways to lasting change. The state plan submission starts the CSBG life cycle for the state as well as the federal office, although it begins at the local level and the state level with the community needs assessment and the development of community action plans. The state plan acceptance is also an initial step in the funding process. So you will hear us encouraging you to submit your plan early if possible, but definitely by September 1st as required. In turn, we will provide you thorough feedback with notification of any additional clarification needed, areas of noncompliance, and/or acceptance of the plan within 10 business days of our review. We are prepared to review and respond to all plans within the first 2 weeks of September, as we did last year. So I'm saying if you do your part, we promise that we will do ours. Similar to what was shared during our recent fourth quarter calls, I want to acknowledge the concern around funding and share that we have not received any additional information, but have been reminded that CSBG is a statutory program that receives discretionary funding through congressional appropriations, which means Congress decides whether to fund CSBG. If Congress funds CSBG in fiscal year 26, HHS will administer the block grant as we have previously. I also want to let you know that HHS is continuing to evaluate and develop any needed guidance regarding the recent signing of HR 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and what that may mean to our programs, as it did not mention CSBG, LIHEAP, and/or weatherization. OCS will provide guidance if and as it becomes necessary. In addition, we will do the same as it relates to the July 10th announcement that HHS has updated the definition of federal public benefits by rescinding the 1998 interpretation of the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act of 1996. We are committed to providing you with accurate information once we've received updates. But today, I'm asking you to anchor yourselves and focus on the elements of the state plans. And to begin the anchoring process, let's quickly reflect on our peak framework, which reminds us of the tools at the disposal of the network, which can be used to help tell the CSBG story and demonstrate its impact. The CSBG plan in its totality is listed under accountability and knowledge of the framework. However, aspects of the state plan are included in all areas. So performance, evaluation, accountability, availability, and knowledge. For performance, the CSBG state plan should clearly define expected outcomes and service goals related to the community needs that center your work on reducing poverty, revitalizing communities, and empowering low-income families, as well as how well you support your eligible entities as informed by your ACSI scores. The plan should also reference evaluation processes that are informed by your training and technical assistance, how the eligible entities are performing as it relates to the success of the org standards, as well as your monitoring, to name a few. Submission of the state plan is part of your basic accountability to comply with the CSBG Act to receive the funding, as well as to demonstrate that systems are in place at the state level to manage federal funds responsibly and transparently. It goes without saying that clearly the submission of the state plan is key to ensuring the availability of CSBG services and that they are provided for individuals and families navigating poverty, as we understand that this is essential and in some cases is the difference to whether families will be able to meet their basic needs. In addition, the peak framework points us to how and where information about services is made publicly available through reporting, the performance management website, and the plan also speaks to creating partnerships to leverage resources to make services more available beyond just federal funding. Finally, the state plan addresses knowledge of CSBG administrators to make data-driven decisions, use available guidance, and learn from best practices to successfully administer CSBG. Plans should show evidence of how knowledge from community needs assessments, stakeholder engagement, and prior performance has informed these strategies. Ongoing training and technical assistance should also be described in the plan to ensure effective and informed implementation. Many of these points will be illuminated today and in our upcoming webinars, which will be held on July 31st and August 4th from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern, as we dive deeper into individual sections of the plans. But I would offer that by applying the peak framework to the development of the CSBG state plans, we can strengthen the integrity of the plan development. We can focus on results and accountability. We can focus on the alignment with local community needs, as well as our ability through our collective roles as accountability partners and stewards to demonstrate that CSBG's mission to support the eradication of poverty is still both relevant and achievable. So I think that's enough from me right now, and I'm sure I'll have more before we close the webinar. But I would like to welcome Renee back to lead us through the first half of today's presentation. Renee?
Thank you, Verna. The submission of a CSBG state application and plan became requirement for eligibility following the passage of the CSBG Act. The CSBG state plan serves as an application for CSBG funding and provides a roadmap detailing how each state will administer CSBG funds in support of continued progression towards meeting the three national program goals to 1, eliminate the causes and consequences of poverty, 2, empower low-income families and individuals to become self-sufficient, and 3, revitalize low-income communities. Completing the state plan is not just about meeting a legislative requirement, it serves as a tool for continuous quality improvement and a way for states to develop and implement important processes to ensure CSBG funds are successfully administered. All federal fiscal year 2026 state plans are due by September 1st, 2025. The key components required for a complete state plan submission include the CSBG eligible entity list, standard form for federal assistance, also known as the SF424M, and the CSBG state plan sections 1 through 15, including an up-to-date designation letter. The CSBG state plan is subject to all requirements of the CSBG Act, including the public hearing requirement. As a reminder, the CSBG state plan is based on the federal fiscal year, which goes from October 1st through September 30th. CSBG grant recipients have the option to submit a CSBG state plan that covers one fiscal year or 2 consecutive fiscal years. For this submission, a 1-year plan would cover fiscal year 2026 or October 1st, 2025 through September 30th, 2026. A 2-year plan would cover fiscal year 2026, which is October 1st, 2025 through September 30th, 2026, and fiscal year 2027, which is October 1st, 2026 through September 30th, 2027. This slide displays all sections of the CSBG state plan. We will briefly go over each section today. The following 2 CSBG state plan webinars will go into further detail. First for sections 1 through 7, and then sections 8 through 15. We encourage you to take notes as we present each section and open the state plan PDF tool so you can complete sections as we go. So the states in maroon are those listed in Group A in the action transmittal and are required to submit a complete CSBG state plan for fiscal year 26 CSBG state plan cycle. And then the states in teal are part of Group B in the action transmittal and are not required to submit a complete CSBG state plan for the fiscal year CSBG state plan cycle. The listed states and territories under Group B may still revise their accepted CSBG state plan. However, OCS does not require states to revise their accepted 2-year state plans. Please note that the action transmittal asks CSBG grant recipients with accepted 2-year plans ending September 30th, 2026 to review and revise accepted plans to ensure they are consistent with the executive orders and the secretarial directives on DEI related funding, and as prescribed by the directive, do not support DEI initiatives or any other initiatives that discriminate on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, or another protected characteristic. The CSBG grant recipients with previously accepted 2-year plans must submit any revised plans or notify OCS that no revision is necessary by November 3rd, 2025. These revisions are subject to the requirements of submitting a full plan, including having a public inspection and the authorized official certify the report. And we will now begin our overview of the requirements for the fiscal year 26 CSBG State Plan, starting with the CSBG eligible entity list. The CSBG eligible entity list serves as the official listing of all CSBG eligible entities receiving not less than 90% of funds. The list uses the Unique Entity Identifier, or UEI, which serves as an identifying number for each eligible entity. The UEI is included in the CSBG Smart Forms and allows OCS to assist with tracking of changes. The CSBG eligible entity list is required for all CSBG states and territory grant recipients. It is used to pre-populate several areas of the CSBG State Plan, specifically items 5.1, 7.2, and 10.2. For this reason, the CSBG eligible entity list must be submitted prior to initializing a new plan, as the entity list also feeds into the CSBG Annual Report Smart Forms. OCS is requesting all revisions completed as soon as possible. Upon initializing the plan, please review item 5.1 to ensure you have added or removed any entity from the list as necessary. This includes for reasons such as designation or redesignation, de-designation, or voluntary relinquishment and mergers. These changes must align with your response in the noted items in section 5 of the plan as well. If your CSBG eligible entity list has changed in year 2 of an accepted CSBG state plan, please work with your CSBG program specialist and policy data and evaluation specialist to revise. The SF424M is submitted as the cover page of the CSBG state plan, and is a requirement of the Office of Grants Management. The SF424M informs OGM of the authorized official, who OGM sends the notice of award to. Of importance, the individual entered within the SF424M must match the authorized official as described in CSBG State Plan Item 1.2 and the designation letter, which is attached to the CSBG State Plan Item 1.3. If the SF424M is not aligned with Item 1.2 and the attached letter, the program specialist will notify the grant recipient of needed changes. Prior to submission of the SF424M, it is also critical to ensure the Unique Entity Identifier, or UEI, is correct. It is an automated field and should not be overlooked to ensure funding is able to be drawn. Please note, if the authorized official changes, the CSBG grant recipient is required to revise their CSBG state plan, even if in the second of a previously approved 2-year plan. That includes revising the SF424M, as well as authorized official contact information under item 1.2 and updating the designation letter. Please also alert your OCS program specialist if the authorized official changes to ensure the correct contact information is in place. I will now provide a brief overview of Section 1, CSBG Lead Agency, CSBG Authorized Official, CSBG Point of Contact, and Official State Designation Letter. This is the state administrative section, and the purpose is for the state to provide information about its agency, staff, and type of CSBG state plan being submitted, such as a 1-year or 2-year plan. The state must also provide the contact information for the state association within its state, if there is one. More specifically, Section 1 asks the grant recipient to provide contact information about their office, the authorized official, the CSBG program contact, and include a copy of the state designation letter. Please ensure that the designation letter is current. DCA will use the letter to verify that the CSBG state plan is certified by the correct designated authorized official. The point of contact cannot certify the plan unless designated. This person should be approved by the Chief Executive Officer of the state, and the letter should include, at minimum, the designated state CSBG lead agency and title of the authorized official of the lead agency administering the CSBG grant. All right, now moving on to Section 2. Section 2, state legislation and regulation, allows the state to identify if there is state legislation or regulations for the administration of CSBG. It is necessary that the CSBG lead agency complete this section accurately because it allows OCS to ensure that grant recipients are administering funds in compliance with federal and state legislation and regulations. The flexibility of a block grant like CSBG requires the state to issue sound and clear guidance. In many instances, the state will hear from DCA. What does your state regulation say? It is important to note that if the state legislation or state regulation is silent or conflicts with the CSBG Act will govern. The purpose of Section 3, State Plan Development and Statewide Goals, is to collect information on the state CSBG lead agency's vision to utilize CSBG funds in accordance with the CSBG Act and the state accountability measures here. Here, the state will provide information about the mission and responsibilities, their CSBG funded goals for the period covered by the plan, and the resources used to inform the development of the state plan, including tools or materials with data about the community served, consultations with other agencies, and feedback from the eligible entities. We will underscore the importance of utilizing feedback from eligible entities throughout this overview. OCS encourages continuous learning and improvement, and we try to amplify innovative efforts of our grant recipients. Continuous improvement can include and analyze state and local tools and goals to identify areas for improvement. We're also interested in the ways states use stakeholder input for decision-making. The ultimate purpose of this process is to make sure the plan will best serve the communities across the state. Overall, this section is meant to encourage states to align the mission and goals of CSBG to the overall mission of the state, to include voices, participants, eligible entities, training partners, and other like-missioned agencies in its feedback loop, to examine and update local level tools, such as the community needs assessment, to better understand and address community needs, and to ensure engagement and continuous learning and process improvements based on feedback mechanisms such as performance management data and the American Customer Satisfaction Index Survey, also known as the ACSI survey. CSBG Information Memorandum 150, use of the ACI to improve network effectiveness, provides guidance to states to help set realistic, reasonable, attainable, and possible goals for eligible entity overall satisfaction. And now on to Section 4. The purpose of Section 4 is to verify that the state meets requirements for the public notice, the public hearing, and the legislative hearing for CSBG state plans as required in Section 676 of the CSBG Act. To complete Section 4, grant recipients should include information on the process for granting public access to and completion of public hearings, which occur each year, and legislative hearings, which occur every 3 years, as well as combined hearings, which is one joint public and legislative hearing as applicable. States should ensure that policies, procedures, and rules relating to the state's hearing process are updated. Ultimately, public input is important for ensuring CSBG is accurately reflecting the needs of the community, and the grant recipient should detail how they provide the public with sufficient time to provide feedback on the CSBG state plan. Distribution to the public should include distribution directly to the eligible entities. For example, this could look like via email or publication on a public website with specific notification to the eligible entities, as well as any other interested parties. Grant recipients need to provide documentation, including but not limited to agendas, sign-in sheets, transcripts, and notices or advertisements of the hearings. To emphasize ensuring the public receives notice for a review of the CSBG State Plan and hearings is crucial, as public input is important to ensure CSBG is accurately reflecting the needs of the community. To encourage participation, some considerations include the following. Consider the purpose of the hearings. Maximum feasible participation is a key tenet of community action in CSBG. Ask yourselves, how can we reach more people and communities served and that their recommendations are reflected in the CSBG State Plan? Utilize all resources available to reach people and communities where they are. Example, through the state association and or to the eligible entities themselves. Such engagement with your state planning process will only strengthen the plan itself and strengthen your approach to administering the grant. With that in mind, consider providing no fewer than 30 days for the public to provide feedback. Grant recipients should consider providing a draft of the state plan to eligible entities early to gain input while the plan is still being developed. As to engaging with the hearings, OCS encourages states to think creatively to increase participation of stakeholders in the hearings. If you believe your state has unique approaches to encouraging participation, please drop those in the chat, as this could be an opportunity, a great opportunity for peer-to-peer learning. One of my colleagues can share any that are written in the chat. Okay. And then for the purpose of Section 5 is to collect data on CSBG eligible entities, including entity type and service area, and information on important changes to the eligible entity list. A goal of the CSBG network is to ensure that we are getting 90% of the funding to the communities we serve, and that is done through our eligible entities, making this section very important. The CSBG eligible entity list is crucial to the completion of Section 5. Item 5.1 is the official listing of all CSBG eligible entities receiving the not less than 90% of funds allocated to the CSBG grant recipients. This list pre-populates from the CSBG eligible entity list. Again, emphasizing the need to make time and accurate revisions to the list and preferably prior to initializing the plan. If item 5.1 does not pre-populate, please contact your program specialist for additional assistance. All right, on to the poll question. I'm going to open the first poll for y'all. So the CSBG organizational standards are outlined in the section of the CSBG Act, section 675A. So the question is, the CSBG organizational standards are outlined in the section of the CSBG Act. And I'll let it up for about 15 seconds. I think I said it.
They might need to think about it, Renee. You can give them like
I'll give it a little bit
10
more.
more seconds.
I see them engaging. I'll allow a little bit more time. I'm just kidding. That's a tricky question. All right, I'm gonna allow about 5 more
104
seconds.
people. There are
Yeah,
104 people in the webinar. Let's see if more are
all
going to join in the fun and answer.
right.
We can't see your names beside your answers, so I think
We
you're
cannot. So no judgment. I still see people answering. All right, Verna, what do you think? Allow a little more time. I still see people answering.
I think we'll go on and give them the answer.
We'll give the answer. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll then. All right. So the CSBG organizational standards are outlined in the section of the CSBG Act A, section 675A, B, 676B, C, 67. That's the question. I'm sorry, y'all. The correct answer is D, none of the above. Section 678B of the CSBG Act requires state CSBG lead agencies to establish performance goals, administrative standards, financial management requirements, and other requirements that ensure an appropriate level of accountability and quality among the state's eligible entities that receive CSBG funds. However, the Act does not specify organizational standards. The CSBG organizational standards were developed through an OCS-funded cooperative agreement to strengthen the capacity of all eligible entities. It was tricky. All right. And 37% got that answer. All right, moving on to section 6. Thank you all for participating. All right, so in section 6, states will describe their procedures related to organizational standards. This includes the choice of standards you will be implementing, such as those developed by the Center of Excellence, or COE, the COE version with modifications, or an alternative standard. While states have discretion on the set of standards they may use, OCS recommends states use the organizational standards developed by the OCS-funded Organizational Standards, COE, because they reflect the requirements of the CSBG Act, good management practices, and the values of community action. In this section, the state will also provide information on the state-level implementation process, the assessment procedures, including corrective action procedures and special circumstances and/or exceptions to that process. The information that states provide in this section allows OCS to assess if the state's policies and procedures meet the requirements under the CSBG Act and identify any needed training and technical assistance. The state should review IM 138 to better understand the state's roles and responsibilities for the establishment of organizational standards for eligible entities. IM 138 serves as a guide tool for states and eligible entities to better understand what the organizational standards are, to establish robust assessment processes, and to identify promising practices and other tools. OCS recommends that the state establish a comprehensive assessment process that includes clear communication to eligible entities, an annual assessment on the status of standards among all eligible entities for reporting in the CSBG annual report, and an assurance that the assessment of standards is independently verified by the state or a third party. Also essential is a well-informed process, and therefore the state is strongly encouraged to collaborate with the eligible entities and state association to set appropriate targets to meet the state's goals. Stakeholders in the local CSBG network can provide valuable insight on the organizational capacity of eligible entities, the realistic achievement of performance targets, and areas for training and technical assistance that will be needed to achieve this new target. We also want to emphasize that organizational standards should supplement your state's monitoring process. It should not be the only component when conducting your state's monitoring of the eligible entities. For example, Standard 5.2 says the organization's governing board has written procedures that document a democratic selection process for low-income board members adequate to assure they are representative of the low-income community. However, having written procedures and following them are two different things. We can explore matters like this a bit more in our upcoming deeper dive trainings, but today's webinar is just focused on a general interview. So a little plug for the next two webinars. And then moving on to Section 7. Section 7 is a critical segment of the state plan as it outlines how funds will be allocated, distributed, and managed among eligible entities and the use of any remaining funds for administrative expenses and discretionary spending. Section 7 allows OCS to see a comprehensive picture of how funding is planned for use, along with the financial management practices and accountability principles the state are implementing. Under the CSBG Act, Section 675C, lowercase a, states are required to demonstrate a planned allocation of no less than 90% of the funds to eligible entities. This supports the block grant structure and CSBG's focus on local service delivery to address locally identified needs. To help visualize this distribution, the state plan provides a table in item 7.2 that outlines the percentage of allocated funds for each eligible entity receiving funds during the fiscal years addressed by the plan, years addressed by the plan. By doing so, recipients promote transparency and facilitate better understanding of how they plan to utilize these funds. It's important to note that this data will directly impact the state's annual report, specifically in Module 1, Table E2. With regard to item 7.4, this distribution timeframe ensures that allocated funds reach eligible entities within 30 calendar days, following the federal award by OCS. The prompt distribution of these funds is crucial in ensuring aid reaches those who need it. The final item we want to discuss in this section is item 7.6, which focuses on the allocation of funds for various activities. This section plays a vital role in determining the percentage of the planned allocation dedicated to these activities for the federal fiscal years covered by this plan. Please keep in mind that this information pre-populates the state's annual report, specifically Module 1, Table E4. Alrighty, so thank you for your attentions to sections 1 through 7. My colleague, Mitch Navetta, Program Specialist with DCA, will now present sections 8 through 15. Now on to you, Mitch.
Thank you, Renee. So, as we continue with our general overview of the state plan, the purpose of Section 8 is to describe the state's plan for delivering CSBG-funded training and technical assistance to eligible entities. This includes the TNTA schedule for Year 1 and Year 2, if applicable, the planned budget, any existing technical assistance plans, or TAPs, and the performance management adjustments. This section should reflect the needs of the eligible entities to successfully and efficiently administer CSBG. It is important to use the knowledge from annual reports, direct feedback from eligible entities and state associations, and any observed challenges when determining what the TNTA schedule will look like. Providing a thorough outline of the state TNTA plan will also allow the federal government to see where need is greatest and help us determine where to focus federal TNTA efforts. This is a prime opportunity for you, as the CSBG State Lead Agency, to collaborate with your respective state association to distribute the state TNTA needs assessment to the CSBG eligible entities, and then carry out that TNTA for state-specific needs. In the chat now, please share with your colleagues some examples of some successful training models or topics that you have covered in your state. And I'll leave this up for a second so folks can think about it, and then when you're ready, if you'd like to share anything in the chat. Thanks, Renee. We can move on to section 9 while folks think about that one. The purpose of section 9 is to detail the state-level linkages and coordination that the state intends to create or maintain to ensure access to CSBG services for individuals, families, and communities with low income. In these responses, OCS wants to know, how does the CSBG network work and partner with communities and other anti-poverty programs to provide the best opportunities possible? How does the state office meaningfully collaborate with their own government, their local network of CAAs, and organizations across the community to ensure high quality, innovative, and locally driven services are available to individuals and families living in poverty? These collaborations are not always through a contract for services or involve an MOU. We want to see any actively pursued linkages and collaborative efforts meant to improve services. Section 676B of the CSBG Act requires an assurance that the participating states will coordinate and link with other government and social services programs. This is important for ensuring the effective delivery of assistance to the population served by CSBG. By braiding and blending funding, not only are states performing more efficiently, but they are also providing a better wraparound service to the individuals and families who need help. One example of state-level coordination and linkages is through WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. The CSBG network is a natural and important partner within the workforce system and has a long history of collaborating with public and private workforce partners to better support the needs of people living in high poverty areas. CSBG is incorporated into WIOA in two significant ways. First, as a required one-stop partner, and second, as an optional combined state plan partner program. Under WIOA, CSBG is a required one-stop partner if the state uses CSBG funds for employment and training services. More specifically, if an eligible entity carries out employment and training activities, then these activities must be available at the comprehensive one-stop centers, either through a physical presence or another means of access. The state also has the option to include CSBG as a combined state plan partner program, which requires the CSBG office to be meaningfully included in the strategic planning and coordination with the state board, the core programs, and any other partner programs. While both require the state to include CSBG in the common elements of the WIOA state plan, the participation as a combined state plan partner program requires more thorough integration across the common elements, as well as completion of a CSBG-specific portion of the WIOA combined state plan. Further, a state that has a combined state plan does not always select CSBG to be a combined state plan partner. With this knowledge, to answer the question in item 9.4, you should only select yes if you are a combined state plan partner program in the state's WIOA combined state plan. This means you assisted in completing a separate designated section for CSBG in the WIOA combined state plan. If you are not a combined state plan partner program, select no. If you select no and are still a required one-stop partner, noting that many CSBG eligible entities are engaged with local workforce partners and American Job Centers, select no and complete the narrative for 9.4b regarding the employment and training activities and a description of how CSBG partners with the workforce system. This may include reference to Memoranda of Understanding or MOUs. There are only a few states who should be answering yes for this item, but many states should be sharing their participation as a required one-stop partner. If you are unsure, please, of course, ask your assigned program specialist. Here's another question for you all to answer in the chat if you have a response. What is a new partnership that your state has developed on the local or state level over the last 2 years? Was there a gap in services that this partnership helped address? And thank you, Renee, for putting that question in the chat. As people ponder on that one, we'll move on to section 10 as you think about that. The purpose of section 10 is to describe the planned monitoring of eligible entities and the associated procedures and policies. This section covers 4 areas: the general monitoring process and calendar, the policies and procedures for corrective action, termination, and reduction of funding, policies on eligible entity designation, de-designation, and redesignation, and fiscal controls and audits and cooperation assurances. A reminder that the monitoring of eligible entities, including corrective action and the state policies that ensure that these activities are properly conducted, is key to ensuring CSBG funds are used appropriately and that CSBG funds and programming are addressing specific needs within the communities being served. We encourage state grant recipients to ensure their policies and procedures are thorough and comprehensive, and that corrective actions, including training and technical assistance, are made available to address any issues that arise during monitoring. Further, we encourage states to be strategic in your planning and to ensure strengthening of the local CSBG network by seeking additional understanding and taking appropriate actions when challenges or opportunities for improvement have been identified. We want to briefly remind grant recipients that OCS conducts standard monitoring reviews as required under Section 678B(c). These monitoring reviews follow a standard protocol that addresses the administrative, programmatic, and fiscal compliance with CSBG Act requirements. So why look at OCS monitoring? All the fiscal, programmatic, and administrative elements of the state plan and annual reports are included in OCS monitoring. Reviewing OCS monitoring protocols can assist state lead agencies in conducting a self-assessment when completing state plans. In item 10.1, the state will be asked to outline their monitoring schedule during which the state reviews eligible entities. While completing this schedule, it is important to remember that Section 678BA of the CSBG Act requires a full on-site monitoring review of an entity at least once every 3 years, an on-site review of each newly designated entity immediately after the completion of the first year receiving funds, and follow-up reviews including prompt return visits to eligible entities that fail to meet the goals, standards, and requirements established by the state, as well as other reviews as appropriate, including reviews of entities with programs that have had other federal, state, or local grants terminated for cause. Let's now discuss the policies and process of eligible entity designation in item 10.8, redesignation in item 10.9, and de-designation in item 10.10. These items describe the process for designating new entities, redesignating existing ones, and de-designating entities when necessary. It is important that state grant recipients take time to clarify state regulations, policies, and/or procedures regarding these processes, and that this information is readily available. Clear designation processes ensure high-performing entities enhance fund usage, regular assessments identify inefficiencies, and transparent procedures uphold integrity. Most important, if your state does not have policies and procedures, this section presents an opportunity to develop policies and procedures for these actions. Lead agencies should ensure that their state policies and procedures are in line with Section 676A of the CSBG Act and IM 116, which is in the chat, corrective action, termination, or reduction of funding. The federal government can assist in providing clarity around these processes and assist in ensuring all requirements under the CSBG Act and IM 116 are met. As always, please contact your assigned program specialist as early as possible if you think a D-designation or V-designation is likely to occur. Now on to Section 11. The purpose of Section 11, Eligible Entity Tripartite Boards, is to review the Eligible Entity Tripartite Board requirements, including tripartite board verifications and what measures are taken to ensure states verify eligible entities are meeting board requirements, how often lead agencies require eligible entities to update tripartite boards and what methods are used to ensure compliance, a description of how a state verifies that eligible entities have policies and procedures in place by which individuals or organizations can petition for adequate representation on an eligible entity's tripartite board as required by Section 676B10 of the CSBG Act, and if the state permits public agencies to use an alternative to tripartite boards as allowed in Section 676B2 in the CSBG Act. For more detail, please see Section 678B of the CSBG Act and CSBG IM 82, which is in the chat. Section 676B of the CSBG Act requires that, as a condition of designation as an eligible entity, private nonprofit entities and public organizations administer their CSBG program through tripartite boards that fully participate in the development, planning, implementation, and evaluation of the program to serve low-income communities. More specifically, a tripartite board is required to be composed of 1/3 elected public officials or their representatives, at least 1/3 representatives of low-income families and individuals in the neighborhood served, and the remainder consists of members of groups and interests in the community served, such as leaders of business, industry, labor, religious groups, law enforcement, education, social welfare, and other major groups and interests of the community. We'll now do a little poll question for you all. Poll question number 2. I just launched it. According to Section 678B of the CSBG Act, tripartite boards must fully participate in A, at least 2 board meetings per year, B, the development and evaluation of the program, C, the development, planning, implementation, and evaluation of the program, or D, direct service provision. And I'll pause while folks submit their answers to this multiple choice question. As Verna put in the chat, she is expecting everyone to get this correct, so please think carefully.
And I expect all 90-some folks to respond.
We're aiming for a maximum feasible participation in this poll question.
Exactly.
Okay, I'll probably give it another maybe 5 or 10 more seconds as folks submit their answers. Okay, I'll end the poll in just a moment. So it looks like the majority of folks got this one right. The correct answer is C. Section 676B of the CSBG Act requires that, as a condition of designation as an eligible entity, private nonprofit entities and public organizations administer their CSBG program through tripartite boards that fully participate in the development, planning, implementation, and evaluation of the program to serve low-income communities. So it looks like almost the majority of folks did get that one correct. Now for Section 12, and we're almost there, Section 12 of 15. The purpose of Section 12 is for the state to identify the income eligibility threshold and practices for ensuring adherence by eligible entities. As such, the state must answer two questions. Keeping the federal poverty level in mind, what level will be used as a threshold to determine eligibility? And does the state have policies and procedures related to the determination of eligibility for individual and family services, general and short-term services, and community-targeted services? Across questions, the state must also consider how they will determine eligibility in situations where individual or household determinations may be difficult. As a reminder, Section 673 of the CSBG Act says that a state may elect to set the threshold at no greater than 125% of the federal poverty line as set by the Department of Health and Human Services. The federal poverty levels have been updated and released for 2025 by the HHS Office of the Assistant Secretary for Planning and Evaluation, or ASPE. States are required to use the most updated levels for the given year. ASPE releases the updated poverty guidelines each January. In recent years, states have set the threshold at 125%, the limit set in the CSBG Act, or at 200%, the limit allowed through congressional action under the continuing resolution. This is possible because, starting in federal fiscal year 2020, in response to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, the CARES Act allowed states to increase the income eligibility threshold for CSBG to 200% of the federal poverty level. This change has remained in effect since then and remains an option until modified by congressional action. When considering the FPL for your state, think about your population, specifically those who are living in poverty. Would it be more feasible to serve at the higher 200% FPL level or to serve at the lower 125% level? For example, if other programs in your state use a threshold of 125%, then you may want to consider aligning CSBG accordingly. Regardless, in Section 12, states should consider adopting language stating that your state will set the income eligibility threshold at 125% of the federal poverty level unless authorized to use the 200% limit under congressional action. Should congressional action remove the ability to use the 200% FPL ceiling, states may be required to amend their state plan if they enter a level above 125%. Wording indicating this flexibility would prevent the need for a state plan amendment in the future. Now on Section 13. The purpose of Section 13, Results-Oriented Management and Accountability, or ROMA, system, is to collect information regarding the performance management system used to support state and eligibility accountability as required under Section 678EA of the CSBG Act, and to collect information related to assurances under Section 676B12 regarding performance management systems and 676B11 regarding community action plans and assessments. So items 13.1 through 13.4 pertain to the assurance under 676B12 that the state will assure the state and eligible entities will participate in ROMA or another performance management system and will describe the outcome measures used to measure eligible entity performance. Items 13.5 and 13.6 pertain to the assurance under 676B11 of the CSBG Act that the state will secure a community action plan, which will include a community needs assessment from each eligible entity in the state as a condition of receipt of funding. Beyond an explicit requirement under the CSBG Act, both categories of assurances are important to the administering of the grant as they will help ensure the grant recipient has engaged thoughtfully in developing their performance management system and ensuring there is a clear process for the development of community action plans and implementation of community needs assessments, all of which will ensure the provision of services are in line with community needs. Please see IM 144 regarding state and federal accountability measures and data collection modernization, and IM 138 regarding state establishment of organization standards for eligible entities for more detail. Now we have another poll question. This one is true or false, and I'll launch that now. True or false? the state must assure that they will secure a community action plan for each eligible entity, but it does not need to include a community needs assessment. And I'll give folks a little bit of time, recognizing that it's now the top of the hour. We will continue on for the next two sections, but if folks need to drop off, this session is being recorded and the slides will be posted online. It looks like so far the overwhelming majority of folks who have responded have gotten this one correct. So that's promising. All right, I'll give it another couple seconds in the interest of time so that folks can participate. All right, I'm going to end the poll in just a moment, and I'll share the results. The correct answer is false. Under Section 676B11 of the CSBG Act, each eligible entity, as part of their community action plan, must submit a community needs assessment for the area they serve. This assessment should outline the needs of the low-income population within that area. So congratulations to folks who got that one right. All right, Section 14. The purpose of Section 14 is to describe how the state will guarantee or assure that CSBG funds will be used to carry out required activities. More specifically, Section 14 includes narrative responses for the assurances required under Section 676B of the CSBG Act. These assurances refer to the use of funds to support local activities, specifically for CSBG services, needs of youth, and coordination of other programs, state use of discretionary funds, eligible entity service delivery, coordination and innovation, eligible entity emergency food and nutrition services, state and eligible entity coordination and linkages, federal investigations, funding reduction or termination, coordination with faith-based organizations, charitable groups, community organizations, eligible entity tripartite board representation, eligible entity community action plans and community needs assessments, and finally, state and eligible entity performance measurement. Some items under Section 14 do not require a narrative response and instead refer to a previously completed section. The final item in the section is a checkbox to confirm that the CSBG authorized official has certified the assurances. This must be selected by the authorized official. And the final section, Section 15, is federal certifications, and this section is for the state to verify or acknowledge that CSBG funds will not be used to carry out prohibited activities and the reporting of such activities. These certifications include the topics of lobbying, drug-free workplace requirements, debarment, suspension, and other responsibility matters, and environmental tobacco smoke. In Section 15, by selecting the checkboxes, the authorized official is ensuring compliance with these different topics on the part of the grant recipient. Again, the authorized official must check the box after each certification. All right, before we wrap up, I want to make a few notes about the Online Data Collection System, or OLDC, which is where you will complete and submit your CSBG State Plan. At least 2 people from your office will likely need OLDC access if they do not have it already. The person who will complete the state plan and the authorized official who will certify and submit it. If you need help troubleshooting with OLDC, please reach out to the Policy, Data, and Evaluation branch using the contact information here on the slide and in the chat. You will want to also, of course, copy your assigned program specialist and your data and evaluation specialist to ensure a timely response. Each region is assigned a program specialist and data and evaluation specialist. For targeted and general technical assistance, please reach out to your assigned program specialist and copy the policy, data, and evaluation specialist. We work closely as a team and request that you include both contacts in any outreach. You can find regional contacts on the page shared in the chat. If you are having issues with your OLDC account, please contact the Grant Solutions Help Desk and copy both your program specialist and data and evaluation specialist. So I'm going to stop recording.